Hello students, today we are going to discuss the chapters quadratic equations and complex numbers. Let us talk about quadratic equations. Now first of all we have to understand what is meant by a general polynomial. Fx is equal to an into x to the power n plus an minus 1 into x to the power n minus 1 plus dot 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 up to a1x plus a naught, where an minus 1, a1, a0, etc. are all real numbers. This is called an nth degree polynomial. Here an, also known as the leading coefficient, must be not equal to 0, and of course n is some whole number. Now if a0, a1, a2 up to an minus 1, an are complex numbers, then fx is called a complex coefficient polynomial. Now what is a quadratic polynomial? Any polynomial of degree 2 in one variable, fx is equal to y is equal to ax square plus bx plus c, where a is not equal to 0 and a, b, c are real numbers, is called a quadratic polynomial. Now here obviously a is called the leading coefficient and c is called the absolute term or the constant term. Now consider a equal to 0. If a is 0, then fx becomes a linear polynomial given that b is non-zero. And if a and c are both 0, then y equal to bx is called an odd linear polynomial. So what is a quadratic equation? Now ax square plus bx plus c equal to 0 is called a quadratic equation whose solution, as you know, is given by x equal to minus b plus minus root over b squared minus 4ac whole divided by 2a. Now here the expression b square minus 4ac, also called d, is called the discriminant of the quadratic equation. Now if this quadratic equation has the roots as alpha and beta, then we know that sum of roots alpha plus beta is given by minus b by a, and the product of roots alpha beta is given by c by a. Let us talk about the nature of roots. Now consider the quadratic equation ax square plus bx plus c equal to 0, where obviously a is not equal to 0 and a, b, c are real numbers. There are three possible cases. If d is greater than 0, then the roots are real and distinct. If d is equal to 0, then the roots are real and coincident, that is equal. And if d is less than 0, then the roots are imaginary. Obviously, if the fourth case being that p plus iq is one root of this quadratic equation, then the other root must be p minus iq. Obviously, iota here implies square root over minus 1, and p and q are real numbers. Now another interesting case is if d is greater than 0 and is a perfect square, if the discriminant is positive and is a perfect square. This implies that the roots of the quadratic are rational and of course unequal. And if one of the roots is given by p plus root over q, given that root q is a surd, then the other root must be given by p minus root q. Now mind you, this is applicable when a, b and c are rational numbers. So this gives you a very basic idea of nature of roots. Next we talk about the graph of a quadratic expression. Now y equal to ax square plus bx plus c, using completing the square and simplifying, can be written as y plus d by 4a. This is equal to a multiplied by x plus b by 2a whole square, where d is the discriminant b square minus 4ac. Now the graph is always a parabola. The graph of a quadratic expression is always a parabola. If a is positive, then the parabola is concave upward, and if a is negative, then the parabola is concave downward. In either case, the vertex is given by minus b by 2a comma minus d by 4a, minus b by 2a comma minus d by 4a. Now the parabola always intersects the y-axis at the point 0 comma c, because if you put x equal to 0, obviously you'll get y equal to c. Now the parabola may or may not intersect the x-axis depending on its nature of roots. Say first case, if a is positive and the discriminant is also positive, then obviously it's an upward concave parabola and the roots are real but unequal, and obviously the roots are given by the points of intersection of the parabola with the x-axis. So in this case, this is how the graph will look like. In case that a is 0 but a is positive but d is 0, then the parabola obviously has equal roots, which means it touches the x-axis at one and only one point, and hence this is the root and this will be the graph. If a is negative and d is positive, it's a downward concave parabola with two roots which are unequal and real, and hence two intersections. Similarly, a negative and d equal to 0 gives you a parabola that looks like this. If a is positive but d is negative, the parabola is upward concave with no real roots. So obviously this is how the graph shall look like. Finally, when a is negative and d is also negative, this is how the graph shall look like. Observe carefully. In the first case, if we consider these two roots as alpha and beta, then the value of the function fx, that is ax square plus bx plus c, will be negative between alpha and beta and positive otherwise. So accordingly, from here we can deduce a very important nature about the sign of a quadratic expression. The sign of fx, that is ax square plus bx plus c. Let us say if fx is always positive, then obviously this is the case, a positive and d negative, because here the quadratic expression is always positive since it lies above the x-axis no matter what is the value of x. Similarly, as you can rightly deduce, fx will always be negative in case a is negative and d is also negative. Fx shall be greater than equal to 0 in this case, because at one point, that is at the root itself, the value of the function may be equal to 0. Similarly, fx will be less than equal to 0 in this case. And here, as we just discussed, if you are looking at case 3, you can easily say that fx, the value of the function, will be positive between alpha and beta and negative elsewhere. So this was about the concept of nature of roots. Next, we talk about the relation between roots and coefficients. The relation between roots and coefficients. Now, obviously, if alpha and beta are the roots of some quadratic, then the equation will be given by x minus alpha multiplied by x minus beta, which is equal to 0, which is nothing but x square minus alpha plus beta into x plus alpha beta equal to 0. And hence we can say any quadratic equation can be written as x square minus sum of its roots into x plus product of roots equal to 0, which is a very important deduction. Next, we talk about the difference between equation and identity. Now, a quadratic equation is satisfied by exactly two values of x, which may be real or imaginary. So the equation ax square plus bx plus c equal to 0. This is a quadratic equation if a is not equal to 0. In this case it has two roots. This is a linear equation if a equal to 0 and b not equal to 0. In this case it has one root. It is a contradiction if a equal to b equal to 0 but c not equal to 0. In this case it has no root. And it is an identity if a equal to b equal to c equal to 0. In this case it has infinite roots. So if a quadratic equation is satisfied by three distinct values of x, obviously then it is an identity, because technically a quadratic equation cannot have more than two roots. So if it has more than two roots, that is three distinct values or more than two distinct values of x, then it is an identity. An identity is basically something that is satisfied no matter which value of the variable is being taken into consideration. Next, we talk about quadratic inequalities. Quadratic inequalities. Now, obviously, ax squared plus bx plus c, considering a is not equal to 0. If this expression is given to be positive, then in order to find a solution of this inequality, we have to consider the value of the discriminant. Remember, if d is greater than 0, then a greater than 0 will give you this kind of a diagram, and then the answer would be beyond the roots alpha and beta, and a less than 0 will give you a diagram like this. In this case, the answer would be between the roots alpha and beta, since there the expression is always positive. Of course, if d equal to 0, then no value exists in case of a less than 0. And this manner we will be able to find out the solutions of different inequalities. Also, we can use the concept of method of intervals or wavy curve method in case of complicated inequalities involving different polynomials of higher degrees. Now, of course, we can also talk about the range of a quadratic expression, the range of a quadratic expression. Let us say fx is given by ax square plus bx plus c. Now of course from the graph itself you will be able to identify the ranges. For example, if you have a graph like this, a positive, d positive, then minus b by 2a comma minus d by 4a gives you the coordinates of the vertex. So of course the minimum value of this expression is minus d by 4a and the maximum value tends to infinity. So in this case we'll say closed minus d by 4a comma infinity open will be the range. And similarly, if a is negative and d is positive, we would say minus infinity open comma minus d by 4a closed is going to be the range. If you have an expression like this, a graph that looks like this here, a is positive and of course d is 0, then we can easily say the range is from open close 0 to infinity open. Similarly, when the expression looks like this, here this is the case of a less than 0 and d equal to 0, we would say the graph ranges from, the range is from minus infinity open to 0 closed. And so on and so forth. We can consider various diagrams and accordingly very easily evaluate the different cases of ranges. Now let's talk about the general theory of equations. Now if you have an equation given by fx equal to a naught x to the power n plus a1 x to the power n minus 1 plus a2 x to the power n minus 2 up to a n minus 1 into x plus a n equal to 0, where a0, a1, a2 up to a n, these are all real numbers, and of course a0 is not equal to 0. If this equation has roots, obviously it has n roots. If the roots are given by alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha 3 up to alpha n, then we have the property that sum of all of these roots, summation alpha 1, is given by minus a1 by a naught. Sum of the product of roots taken 2 at a time, this is given by plus a2 by a naught. Sum of the product of roots taken 3 at a time, this is given by minus a3 by a naught, and in this manner it continues. Now few things are to be kept in consideration here. If alpha is the root of this equation fx is equal to 0, then this polynomial is exactly divisible by x minus alpha. I think you remember that this concept is also known as factor theorem, that if alpha is a root, then this function fx is exactly divisible by x minus alpha. Now the second case that we need to keep in mind is every equation of nth degree where n is greater than or equal to 1 has exactly n roots, and if the equation has more than n roots, then obviously you must remember it is called an identity. Now if the coefficients of this equation are all real and alpha plus I beta is one of its roots, then obviously alpha minus I beta must be another root, because in case of real coefficients, imaginary roots always occur in conjugate pairs. Similarly, in case of rational coefficients, just as discussed previously, irrational roots also occur in conjugate pairs. Surd contents come as alpha plus root beta and alpha minus root beta only when the coefficients a0, a1, a2 up to an are rational quantities. Of course, if there are two numbers, let us say a and b, such that f of a and f of b are of opposite signs, that is their product is negative, it means that fx equal to 0 must have at least one real root between a and b. Comes from the basic concept of polynomial graphs. Now also every equation of odd degree has at least one real root of a sign opposite to that of its last term. This has to be kept in mind. Next we talk about location of roots. Location of roots. Now of course it's a very interesting concept, the idea of location of roots. Let us say various cases can be considered. If you have a certain equation given as fx equal to ax square plus bx plus c, and it is also given that you are to find out the condition such that, let us say, both the roots are greater than, the roots alpha and beta are both greater than some real number k. So observe there are so many possible cases. It is possible that a and a is positive. It is possible the roots are distinct. In that case we can draw the graph as such, and since both the roots are greater than k, we can put k as a number to the left of these roots alpha and beta, and see conditions are coming up as f of k, the functional value of k must be positive. Of course, minus b by 2a, this value, the abscissa of the vertex must lie between the roots alpha and beta, and obviously d greater than 0 is given. That is why you have taken this assumption. Similarly, in a case like this, you could consider a is negative, d is positive. Of course, f of k will be negative here. In this case, f of k was positive, and alpha and beta being the roots, we'll consider that minus b by 2a will lie between alpha and beta, and so on and so forth. In different cases, for different considerations, location of roots can be identified, the conditions can be obtained simply by drawing the graphs and accordingly properly understanding the situation and hence trying to find conditions. So this would mark the end of the theoretical discussion of the chapter quadratic equations. Now we'll go through certain questions for clarity. Let us see this example. Have a look at this question. It is given that x square plus mx plus n equal to 0 has roots which are twice those of x square plus px plus m equal to 0, and m comma n and p are non-zero. Find the value of n by p. Now see how to solve this question. It is given that x square plus px plus m's roots have a relationship with x square plus mx plus n's roots. If you consider these two roots as alpha and beta, then obviously these two roots become twice alpha and twice beta. From here you can say 2 times alpha plus beta, this is equal to minus m, and from here you can say that product of roots alpha beta equal to m, so 4 alpha beta is, of course here we can also write that alpha plus beta from this equation is minus p. Therefore you can eliminate alpha plus beta and write minus m by 2 equal to minus p, that is m equal to 2p. Similarly, from this equation alpha beta is n, so 4 alpha beta, and from here, alright, when you are multiplying 2 alpha and 2 beta, we get 4 alpha beta, this is n, and of course from the other equation we have alpha beta which is equal to m, and hence we have another result, 4 times m, this is equal to n. Now quite clearly, dividing, we get 4m by m equal to n by 2p, which means n by p must be equal to 8, and this is the answer to this question. This question asks you, if roots of x square minus 2n plus 18 into x minus n minus 11 equal to 0, where n belongs to the set of integers, if these roots are rational, then find the values of n. Now of course discriminant of this equation must be a perfect square, so b square minus 4ac, that is 4 times n plus 9 whole square plus n plus 11, this must be a perfect square, and obviously this implies that since 4 is already a perfect square, we have n square plus 19n plus 92 must be a perfect square. So assume this to be equal to some m square. Now this means solving, we get n equal to minus 19 plus minus root over 4m square minus 7 divided by 2, and here again this must be a perfect square, 4m squared minus 7. So therefore 4m square minus 7 should be a perfect square, implies this should be equal to p squared. Obviously from here we get 4m square minus p square equal to 7. From here we can see clearly that 2m plus p and 2m minus p are the factors which can take up values as plus 7 plus 1, minus 7 minus 1, plus 1 plus 7, and minus 1 minus 7. Simplifying, we get either m equal to plus minus 2, and hence putting this value of m in this equation, n square plus 19 n plus 92 equal to m square, that is 4, solving we get n is equal to either minus 8 or minus 11, which would be the solution. Have a look at this question. This equation is given x square minus k plus 1 into x plus k square plus k minus 8 equal to 0. You have to find the value of k such that one root of this equation exceeds 2 and the other root is less than 2. Obviously, since the coefficient of x square is 1, that is positive, and there are two roots which are supposed to be 1 greater than 2, 1 less than 2. Of course, the roots are real and distinct. Hence, a is positive and d is positive. We have already identified this. So, this is the diagram. One root is greater than 2 and the other root is less than 2. So, of course, this is the case. F2 must be a negative quantity because one root is greater than 2 and the other root here is less than 2. So, putting F2 less than 0 and simplifying, we get 4 minus 2 times k plus 1 plus k squared plus k minus 8 less than 0, and solving this gives us k belongs to minus 2 comma 3 open interval, which is the required answer. Now here ax square plus bx plus c equal to 0 and x square plus 2x plus 9 is also equal to 0, given that a, b, c belong to real numbers. The question is, if these two equations have a common root, then find the value of a is to b is to c. Now clearly observe that this equation has a discriminant negative 2 square minus 4 into 9, and obviously that means if these two equations have common roots, then these two equations must have one imaginary root common. But it is also given that a, b and c are real numbers, which means the other root is also going to be exactly same, and hence both these equations are absolutely going to be proportional. The coefficients, I mean, that means a by 1 must be equal to b by 2 must be equal to c by 9, which means obviously a is to b is to c must be equal to 1 is to 2 is to 9. Let us discuss about complex numbers. The complex numbers are defined as expressions of the form a plus iota b, where a and b are real numbers and iota is defined as a quantity square root over minus 1. Usually complex numbers are denoted by the letter small z. A is called the real part of z, denoted by rez, and b, only b, not ib, is called the imaginary part of z, denoted by imz. Therefore, if real part of z is equal to 0, then a complex number can be called purely imaginary. If the imaginary part of z is equal to 0, then the complex number is said to be purely real, and the imaginary part of z, if it is non-zero, then the complex number is also called an imaginary number. Now in the number system, natural numbers came first, which are subsets of the whole number set, which are subsets of the integer set. Subsequently, these belong to the rational numbers, which are subsets of real numbers, and finally all real numbers are or can also be expressed as complex numbers. The 0 is both purely real as well as purely imaginary, but not an imaginary number. Iota is a very interesting and important quantity to be kept in mind. Iota is equal to square root over minus 1. As you can clearly see, iota squared is minus 1, iota cube is minus iota, iota power 4 is 1, iota power 5 gets back to being iota. So it follows a cyclicity property of power or period 4. Now talking about the algebraic operations of complex numbers. Now, algebraic operations on complex numbers are similar to those on real numbers, treating I as a polynomial. That means if we are talking about addition of two complex numbers z1 and z2, or subtraction, it simply means x1 plus I by 1 is added to or minus x2 plus I by 2. Treating I as some other variable, we can write this as x1 plus minus x2, the like terms taken together, plus I times y1 plus minus i2. This is also a complex number, obviously. Similarly, z1 into z2, z1 by z2, etc. can also be evaluated using simple and basic rules of algebra. Mind you, z greater than 0 is a meaningless thing to say. z greater than 0 doesn't make any sense. Now two complex numbers are said to be equal, z1 and z2, if their real parts are equal and also their imaginary parts are equal. We talk about the conjugate of a complex number. Now if z equal to a plus ib is some complex number, then its conjugate is denoted by z bar and is defined simply as a minus ib. That is, it is obtained by changing the sign of its imaginary part. Now we must keep in mind a few things, that z plus z bar, this is equal to 2 times real part of z. Z minus z bar, this is equal to 2 iota times imaginary part of z. And a very important property is z bar, this is equal to modulus z whole square, where modulus z is equal to root over a square plus b square. That is root over real part of z whole square plus imaginary part of z whole square. More about modulus very soon. This question asks you to express 1 plus 2i whole squared by 2 plus i whole squared in the form of x plus iy, that is in the standard form. So obviously 1 plus 2i whole squared is 1 plus 4 iota minus 4. 2 plus i whole square is 4 plus 4 iota minus 1, which when simplified gives you minus 3 plus 4i by 3 plus 4i. To solve a question like this, what you do is consider the denominator, multiply the entire expression by the conjugate of the denominator, that is 3 minus 4i in this case, and on simplification this becomes 7 by 25 plus iota times 24 by 25. Let's talk about modulus of a complex number. Now if z equal to a plus ib is any complex number, then its modulus mod z is defined as square root over a square plus b square. Complex numbers also have another very important attribute called argument or amplitude. Now the argument z of any complex number is basically defined as, it can be tan inverse b by a if a and b are both positive. It can be pi minus tan inverse b by a if a negative but b is positive. It can be tan inverse, in this case we will take modular symbols, mod b by a minus pi if a and b are both negative, and it will be minus tan inverse mod b by a if a is positive but b is negative. We have some very important properties of conjugate, modulus and argument which we need to keep in mind. Now let us consider for these properties to be understood that z, z1, z2 etc. are all complex numbers. First property, the conjugate of a complex number is z itself, the number itself, z bar equal to z. Next, z1 plus or minus z2, the conjugate of that is equal to z1 bar plus minus z2 bar. z1 z2 whole bar, this is equal to z1 bar into z2 bar, and also z1 by z2 whole bar, this is equal to z1 bar divided by z2 bar. Argument of z1 z2, this is equal to argument z1 plus argument z, and argument of z1 by z2, this is equal to argument of z1 minus argument of z2. Modulus of z1 z2, this is equal to modulus z1 multiplied by modulus z2, and modulus of z1 by z2, this is equal to modulus z1 divided by modulus z2. A very important rule is that all known as triangle inequality, which is mod of mod z1 minus mod z2, this is less than equal to mod of z1 plus minus z2, which is less than equal to mod of z1 plus mod of z2. Have a look at this question. It's given that 1 by z2 minus z3 plus 1 by z3 minus z1 plus 1 by z1 minus z2, this is equal to 0, such that z1, z2, z3 are points in the complex plane. Then you have to prove that z1, z2, z3 form an equilateral triangle. Now let me assume that z2 minus z3, this quantity, is some p, z3 minus z1 is some q, and z1 minus z2 is some r. Now obviously it is given that 1 by P plus 1 by Q plus 1 by R, this is equal to 0, which means PQ plus QR plus RP equal to 0. We can write P into Q plus R plus QR, this is equal to 0. But observe that P plus Q plus R is 0, which means in place of Q plus R, we can put minus P. That gives us minus P squared plus QR. This is equal to 0, which means that P square must be equal to QR. Now, why was P plus Q plus R equal to 0? Because P was Z2 minus Z3, Q was Z3 minus Z1, R was Z1 minus Z2. Add all of them, you will get 0, which means Q plus R must be equal to minus P. Now, P square equal to QR implies that we can also write P bar whole square equal to Q bar times R bar, taking conjugate on both sides, and that means P bar whole cube, this is equal to P bar multiplied by QR into QR bar, and therefore we can write P bar whole cube, this is equal to PQR multiplied by PQR whole bar. Similarly, the others can also be obtained, and hence we can write that P bar is equal to Q bar, which is equal to R times R bar. But we know that P bar is mod P square, and therefore mod P is equal to mod Q, which is equal to mod R. And that means that the distances between the individual complex numbers are all same. Hence we can deduce that these will be vertices of an equilateral triangle. Let's talk about representation of a complex number. Now, every complex number can be represented on a plane called the Argand plane, also known as the complex plane or the Gaussian plane. It is almost very similar to coordinate system, only that instead of calling this as the x-axis, the horizontal line is called the real axis and the vertical line is called the imaginary axis. So, any complex number x plus iota y is basically plotted as x units away from the imaginary axis and y units away from the real axis. As you can clearly see, understand that mod z equal to root over x square plus y square hence becomes nothing but the distance from the origin to that point, and amplitude z is the angle which that distance makes with the positive direction of the real axis. This angle is taken in the anti-clockwise sense in case the point lies in the first or the second quadrant, and the amplitude is taken in the clockwise sense if the point is taken in the third or fourth quadrant. Of course, you can clearly observe that if this angle is taken as theta, then every complex number z can also be represented as r cos theta plus iota times r sin theta. So, taking the r common outside, where r is basically mod z, same things, we can write it as cos theta plus I sin theta. Now, here a very important form comes into play, which we keep in mind, that Euler form. Every complex number z can also be written as mod z, that is r multiplied by e to the power I theta, and e to the power I theta is nothing but cos theta plus I sin theta. This equation is called the Euler equation, which is to be kept in mind, which comes in very handy to solve various kinds of complex number based questions. Now, have a look at this question. It is given that a and b are complex numbers. Then we have to find out the complex numbers z1 and z2 such that these form the diagonals of a square, that is small a and small b are the diagonals of a square if the other two diagonals are z1 and z2. Then how do you express z1 and z2 in terms of small a and small b? So, see, quite clearly we can write using concept of rotation that a minus z1 divided by b minus z1, this is equal to e to the power I times pi by 2, which is nothing but I cos pi by 2 plus I sin pi by 2, and hence we get a minus z1 equal to I times b minus z1, and from here we get z1 equal to a plus b by 2 plus I times a minus b by 2. So, this is obtained by this concept of rotation along this particular angle. Similarly, if we consider the concept of rotation here, we will get z2 equal to a plus b by 2 minus iota times a minus b, by 2. We talk about de Moivre's theorem. Now it tells us that if you have a complex number in the form cos theta plus I sin theta, and if you raise it to the power n, then one of its values must be given by cos n theta plus I sin n theta, where n is any rational number. Now of course this theorem can be easily proved using Euler formula, because cos theta plus I sin theta can be taken as e to the power I theta whole to the power n is given by e to the power I times n theta using indices, and hence we get back to cos n theta plus I sin n theta, that formula. Now we study the concept of cube roots of unity. Now if you have an equation z cube equal to 1, then you can rewrite it as z cube minus 1 cube equal to 0. On factorizing, this becomes z minus 1 multiplied by z square plus z plus 1 equal to 0. From this we get one of the roots to be equal to 1, and from this equation we get the roots to be equal to minus 1 plus minus iota root 3 by 2, which are to be taken as omega and omega square. We give them the names omega and omega square. Therefore the cube roots of unity are given by 1 omega and omega square. Two very important properties come from here. The sum of the roots 1 plus omega square is given by 0, and the product of the roots, which is nothing but omega cube, is given by 1. Using these two properties, a lot of problems based on cube roots can be solved. For example, have a look at this problem. It tells us 1 plus x square whole to the power 3n. This is equal to summation r equal to 0 to 6n ar into x to the power r. Then we are to compute the value of a0 plus a6 plus a12 up to a6n. Now how to solve this problem? In this original equation, if we put, actually it's an identity, because the left hand side and the right hand side are same, whatever might be the value of x. So if we are putting x equal to 1, we shall obtain 3 to the power 3n equal to a0 plus a1 plus a2 plus a3 plus a4 plus a5 plus a6 up to a6n. If you put x equal to omega, you shall get 1 plus omega square is 0, which is equal to a0 plus a1 omega plus a2 omega square plus a3 omega cube is 1, you must remember that, plus a4 omega power 4 is omega plus a5 omega square plus a6 omega power 6 will be again 1 and continues up to a6n. We put x equal to omega square, and again we get 1 plus omega square plus omega, because omega power 4 is omega, which gives us a0 plus a1 omega square plus a2 omega plus a3 plus a4 omega square plus a5 omega plus a6 up to a6n, and this continues. Again we take x equal to minus 1, x equal to minus omega, and x equal to minus omega square to obtain 3 more series. Adding all of those series, we will get 3 to the power 3n plus 1 plus minus 1 to the power 3n multiplied by 2 to the power 3n plus 1 whole divided by 6. This is equal to a0 plus a6 plus a12 up to a6n. Hence and etc. We talk about the nth roots of unity. Now if 1 alpha square up to alpha to the power n are the nth roots of unity, then they are all in a common in a GP with common ratio. Here alpha is given by e to the power I times 2 pi by n. Now what do we mean by nth roots? If you take an equation z to the power n equal to 1, where n is some natural number, in this case we can say z2 is equal to 1 to the power 1 by n, and it will have n distinct values. How do we obtain those n distinct values? By taking 1 as e to the power I times 2k pi, because cos 2k pi plus I sin 2k pi for any integer k will always give us 1, and hence we get e to the power I times 2 pi by n into k, where k can be taken as 0, 1, 2 up to n minus 1, which are giving us these n roots, and hence e to the power I into 2 pi by n e to the power I into 2 pi by n whole square, etc., will become the nth roots of unity. And here very interesting properties are obtained, such as product of all the roots may be plus 1 or minus 1 accordingly as n is odd or even. Sum of all the roots 1 plus alpha square up to alpha to the power n minus 1. These all will be equal to 0. Now in complex numbers, we can also use the concept of geometry. In fact, complex geometry is a very important part, whereby we can deduce the equations of straight lines and circles in terms of complex numbers. So if you have any straight line on the Argand plane, its general equation is given by a z bar plus a bar z plus b equal to 0, where a is some complex number and b is some real number. And if you have a circle, let us say center of the circle is z0 and any point on the circle is z, let us say the radius is r. Obviously mod z minus z0 represents distance between two complex numbers, so this distance is always equal to r. This is the standard equation. Squaring both sides and simplifying, we get the general equation of a circle as zz bar plus az bar plus a bar z plus b equal to 0, where the center is given by z0, that is minus a. Minus a is the center, and also the radius r is given by square root over mod a square minus b. So these are two very important concepts to be kept in mind to solve problems. Now there is this question. Have a look at this interesting example, that if a given by z1, b given by z2 and c given by z3, they form an acute angle triangle in the Argand plane. So ABC form an acute angle triangle in the Argand plane, and it is given that the origin is the orthocenter. The origin is the orthocenter. Then we have to prove that z1 z2 bar is required to prove z1 z2 bar plus z1 bar z2. This is equal to z2 z3 bar plus z2 bar z3. This is equal to z3 z1 bar plus z3 bar z1. Now clearly we can see that the angle between BC and AO is pi by 2, and hence z3 minus z2 by z1 is purely an imaginary quantity, and therefore for imaginary quantities what do we have? Z plus z bar equal to 0, and hence z3 minus z2 by z1 plus z3 bar minus z2 bar by z1 bar, this must be equal to 0, which when simplified gives us that z3 z1 bar plus z1 z3 bar, this is equal to z1 z2 bar plus z2 z1 bar. Similarly, we take any other orthocenter's case. This BO is perpendicular to AC, and we will get the relationship between z2 z3 and z1, the other one, and combining all two of them we'll get the required solution. Have a look at this question here. It is given that if the complex number z lies on the curve mod of z minus 1 plus iota equal to 1, then we have to find the locus of the complex number w equal to z plus iota divided by 1 minus iota, where iota is of course square root over minus 1. Now observe that mod of z minus 1 plus iota, this is equal to 1, implies that mod of z plus 1 minus iota equal to 1. Also, it is given that w is equal to z plus iota by 1 minus iota, which implies that 1 minus iota into w minus iota equal to z. And therefore, now we can say mod of 1 minus iota into w minus iota plus 1 minus iota, this is equal to mod of z plus 1 minus iota, which implies that mod of 1 minus iota multiplied by w plus 1 minus 2 iota by 1 minus iota, this is equal to 1, which again implies that mod of w plus 1 minus 2i by 1 minus I multiplied by 1 plus I by 1 plus I. This is equal to 1 by root 2, which implies that mod of w plus 3 plus I by 2, this is equal to 1 by root 2. And hence obviously we can rewrite this as modulus of w minus 3 minus I by 2. This is equal to 1 by root 2. Clearly it is the locus of a circle which is centered at minus 3 by 2 comma half, and radius is given by 1 by root 2. Now this question tells you let z equal to cos theta plus I sin theta. Then the value of summation m equal to 1 to 15 imaginary part of z to the power 2m minus 1 at theta equal to 2 degree is how much? Now z equal to cos theta plus iota sin theta. This means that z to the power 2m minus 1, this is equal to, using De Moivre's theorem, we can write cos 2m minus 1 theta plus iota times sin 2m minus 1 theta. Quite clearly, hence we have imaginary part of z to the power 2m minus 1 is equal to sine of 2m minus 1 times theta. Therefore, summation m equal to 1 to 15 imaginary part of z to the power 2m minus 1, this is equal to summation m equal to 1 to 15 sine 2m minus 1 theta, which is equal to sine theta plus sine 3 theta plus sine 5 theta up to 15 terms. And hence using formula of sin a plus 2b, sin a plus b plus sin a plus 2b up to n terms, we get sine 15 times 2 theta by 2 multiplied by sine theta plus 14 into theta whole divided by sine theta. This is equal to, we are using the formula sin a plus sin a plus b plus sin a plus 2b up to n terms as sin nb by 2 into sin a plus n minus 1 into b by 2 by sin b by 2. Now this becomes sin 15 theta times sin 15 theta whole divided by sin theta. This is equal to, since theta is 2 degree, so we have sin 30 degree whole squared divided by sin 2 degree. So that would be sin 30 whole square is 1 by 2 square 1 by 4, and hence 1 by 4 sin 2 degree will be the answer to this question. Next question, area of the rectangle whose vertices are the roots of the equation z bar cube plus z bar z cube equal to 350, where z is a complex number, is given by. Now here z equal to x plus iy, x and y are integers, as was actually mentioned in this problem, that the real part and imaginary part of z were integers. So z bar cube plus z bar z cube equal to 350, but we know that z bar is mod z square, so we can take the mod z square common outside, leaving us with z bar square plus z square over here, which is equal to 350. Now mod z square is square root over x square plus y square whole square, so that would be x square plus y square, and z bar square plus z square on simplification can be written as x minus iy whole square plus x plus iy whole square, which becomes x square minus y square times 2, and we divide with the 2 to make it 175 here, which implies that x squared plus y square into x square minus y square is equal to 25 into 7, or it can also be written as 35 into 5. Now remember that x and y are integers. So from the first equation here, that is considering 25 into 7, we can write x square plus y square equal to 25 and x square minus y square equal to 7, which gives us, on solving, x square equal to 16, that is x equal to plus minus 4, and y square equal to 9, that is y equal to plus minus 3. And hence the vertices of the rectangles become 4 comma 3, 4 comma minus 3, minus 4 comma 3, and minus 4 comma minus 3. But the question was to find the area of this rectangle, and hence quite clearly the area of this rectangle is going to be given by 2 into 4, that is the length, multiplied by 2 into 3, which is the breadth. So 8 into 6, that is 48 square units. Now of course, if we want to consider the second equation from here, we will see that x square plus y square is 35 and x square minus y square is 5, which gives us x square equal to 20, which is not possible because for any integral value of x, x square equal to 20 doesn't exist, and hence we will be not considering this equation, and therefore the answer would be 48 only. Next question, let z be a complex number such that imaginary part of z is not equal to 0 and a equal to z square plus z plus 1 is real, then a cannot be which of these following. Now since imaginary part of z is non-zero, it clearly means that z is non-real. So this equation z square plus z, rewriting this like plus 1 minus a equal to 0. This will have non-real roots if its discriminant is negative. So obviously we put b square minus 4ac, that is 4 into 1 minus a. This is negative, which gives us a less than 3 by 4. And therefore a cannot take the value 3 by 4, which means obviously 3 by 4, the option D is correct. So it cannot be 3 by 4. It can be less than this, which is given by the remaining 3 options. Next question. Let complex numbers alpha and 1 by alpha bar lie on the circles x minus x naught whole squared plus y minus y naught whole squared equal to r square, and x minus x naught whole squared plus y minus y naught whole square equal to 4r square respectively. If 2 times mod z naught square equal to r square plus 2, where z naught equal to x naught plus I y naught, then mod alpha equal to how much? Now as alpha lies on the first circle here, x minus x naught whole square plus y minus y naught whole square equal to r square, we have mod of alpha minus z naught whole square, this is equal to r square. So clearly we can write alpha minus z naught multiplied by alpha bar minus z naught bar, this is equal to r squared, which gives us alpha alpha bar minus alpha z naught bar minus z naught alpha bar plus z naught bar is equal to r squared, which gives us mod alpha squared plus mod z naught square minus alpha z naught bar minus alpha bar z naught, this is equal to r square. Let's call this equation 1. Also 1 by alpha bar lies on the other second circle that was given, so we have 1 by alpha bar minus z naught mod whole squared, this is equal to 4r square, which implies that on simplification we will get 1 by mod alpha squared minus z naught alpha bar by mod alpha squared minus z naught bar alpha by mod alpha square plus mod z naught squared, this is equal to 4r squared, which can be simplified as 1 plus mod alpha square mod z naught square minus z naught alpha bar minus z naught bar alpha, this is equal to 4r square times mod alpha square, which is the second equation. Now of course subtracting the second equation from the first equation, we will get 1 minus mod alpha squared plus mod z naught square multiplied by mod alpha squared minus 1 is equal to r square multiplied by 4 times mod alpha squared minus 1, or this may be written as mod of alpha squared minus 1 multiplied by mod of z naught squared minus 1, this is equal to r square times 4 times mod alpha square minus 1. Now of course we can use the fact that mod z naught square is equal to r square plus 2 divided by 2, and using this fact we get mod of alpha square minus 1 multiplied by r square by 2, this is equal to r square times 4 mod alpha squared minus 1, and this gives us mod alpha squared minus 1 is equal to 8 times mod alpha squared minus 2, which on solving gives us mod alpha equal to 1 by root 7, and hence this would be the answer. This next question is the smallest value of k for which both the roots of the equation x square minus 8kx plus 16 times k square minus k plus 1 equal to 0 are real, distinct and have values at least 4 is. Now see, from the given equation, since both the roots are real and distinct, obviously the discriminant must be greater than 0, which means minus 8k whole squared minus 4 is, so 4 into 16 into k squared minus k plus 1, this should be greater than 0. On simplification, 64k square will get cancelled, so you are having plus 4 into 16 times k minus 1. So of course k is greater than 1. Now since both the roots are greater than or equal to 4, obviously sum of roots must be greater than 8, so alpha plus beta greater than 8, and also the functional value of 4 must be greater than or equal to 0, and this also implies that k is greater than 1. Again 16 minus 32k plus 16 times k square minus k plus 1 greater than equal to 0 implies that this is from f of 4 greater than equal to 0. This gives us k square minus 3k plus 2 greater than equal to 0, which gives us k minus 1 into k minus 2 greater than or equal to 0. This implies that k belongs to minus infinity comma closed 1 union closed 2 comma infinity. So we had k equal to k greater than 1 and we have k belongs to this. Therefore obviously combining both of them we get k must be greater than or equal to 2, and hence the smallest possible value k minimum is going to be equal to 2. So the minimum value of k is going to be 2. Next question, the number of distinct real roots of this equation x power 4 minus 4x cube plus 12x square plus x minus 1 equal to 0 is how much? Now see, from this equation we could rewrite this as x power 4 minus 4x cube plus, let's say, 6x square minus 4x plus 1 plus, we break the 12 into 6x square plus 6x square, we break the x into minus 4x plus 5x of course, and we break this minus 1 into plus 1 minus 2. So this is equal to 0 can be written. The requirement of doing this was we needed x minus 1 whole to the power 4 formula, and hence this is x minus 1 whole to the power 4 plus 6x square plus 5x minus 2 is equal to 0, which basically gives us x minus 1 whole to the power 4 is equal to minus 6x square minus 5x plus 2. Now to solve this polynomial, it is equivalent to find the intersection points of the curve y equal to x minus 1 whole to the power 4 and y equal to minus 6x square minus 5x plus 2, which can be rewritten as, of course, here the right hand side can be rewritten as minus 1 by 6 times. Okay, we have to take minus 6 common. So this means that basically what we do is we consider this to be the parabola y equal to minus 6x square minus 5x plus 2, and we rewrite it by completing the square, which gives us x plus 5 by 12 whole squared. This is equal to minus 1 by 6 times y minus 73 by 24. So the graph of these two curves will look like, let me try to solve this. X minus 1 whole to the power 4 equal to y will give you y equal to 0 when x equal to 1, and it is obviously an upward concave curve. So this is the graph of y equal to x minus 1 whole to the power 4, and also from this parabola we have the vertex to be minus 5 by 12 comma 73 by 24, of course somewhere here, and it is a downward concave parabola. So when x equal to 0, then y is a positive quantity, so of course the parabola looks something like this. It might not cross 1, it's just for, it will be intersecting at two different points, and hence clearly they have 2 points of intersection, which means this given polynomial will have 2 real roots.